Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, June 29th regular meeting of the Novi Community School Board of Education. If you would all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this evening we do have a change to our agenda. Is that correct, Dr. Matthews?
Correct. We will remove under contract renewals the voting procedure for administrative contract renewal. We will remove that from the agenda and start with I2.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And first we have a public hearing. We are required to have a public hearing on our budget every year, so this is an opportunity for that public hearing. And I will turn this over to Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The state requires that all school districts adopt a budget for the upcoming fiscal year by June 30th of each year. The process of adoption includes a notice for a public budget hearing, which must appear in the local newspaper at least 6 days prior to the hearing. Our notice appeared in the local newspaper on Thursday, June 16th. And that the budget document, including proposed property tax millage rate, must be available for public inspection. The budget document was available as of Tuesday, June 27th, 2017 for public inspection at the Educational Services Building. The public hearing on the budget and the property tax millage rate proposed to be levied to support the proposed budget must then take place, and then the board adopts the budget. This year the public hearing is scheduled for tonight at 7 p.m. at the regular meeting of the Board of Education. Mr. Barr will present some budget information, and then we would open for anyone who would want to speak about the budget, and if no one speaks, we will then close the public hearing. Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Matthews, President Murphy, and members of the board. As Dr. Matthews said, the purpose of the hearing is to give the community the ability to ask any questions at the meeting before you vote on the budget for later on the agenda for next year. So you've seen most of these agenda items, or these slides already in one format over the last couple weeks. The first slide shows the millage rates. We're required to show the millage rates that we're going to be having for this coming year. The board approved this on June 1st. And you can see again the homestead rates and other rates for non-homesteads. And as we spoke about on June 1st, we see a decline in all properties for their millage rates. A community or a home will go down about 3/4 of a mil, and same thing for a business property. In the general fund, and I'll point out things that changed from the time this was published to the time the school aid fund budget was had a consensus between the House and Senate. Has not been approved by the governor yet. The governor has not signed it, so that means he can still lie on things, or he may or may not. We talked about the challenges we have with cuts that get to be restored, diverting funds to community colleges, higher ed, and general fund. And again, community colleges are 100% funded now from the school aid fund. Corporate tax cuts of close to $2 billion. Road funding is obviously an issue. Flint, more money being sent over there for obvious reasons, and then the retirement reform and the obligations that there are for liabilities in the retirement system. The revenue assumptions that we spoke about previously still stand. In 17-18, if you look at the third line down, our foundation allowance will go up $60 from $8,488 to $8,548. Once again, as in prior years, the state has adopted a 2X formula where higher fund districts like ourselves get half of what lower fund districts get. You would see down below a fourth line from the bottom of the line called State Aid Hold Harmless 20M. That $51 that was added to this year's budget for 16-17 for next year as a result of the School Aid Act budget get rolled into the foundation. So when you see our foundation, if you ever see it written anywhere, it will be $8,599, which is $8,548 plus the $51. Okay? Those will be rolling together. We are susceptible to cuts, I would say, in one area, which is 20F. 20F is a categorical offset. It's also kind of like a hold harmless, which is about $93 a student. There's about 50-some districts that get this in the state. And just like the state went and cut 20J back in 9-10, they could easily come and do the same thing to the districts. This is really just like 20J, just 20F. So that will be rolled into, that's not rolled in, we wish it was rolled in, but it's not. Differently than what's on here is the House and Senate agreed also to $25 per student for high school students. That is not in this budget because it was too late by the time this was published. That's about $50,000. Okay. There's also some funding in there for ELL students that are at certain levels, the lower levels in terms of the ability to speak English, and that is a different funding level depending on the number of students that might get us $30,000 or $40,000. Again, those have not been approved by the government yet. Those are not showing up in this budget you're seeing tonight. We've talked about the source of revenue. We're very heavily driven by state aid. The expenditure assumptions, we have an increase of 2 teachers in general education due to increasing students at various grades. EL teachers increased. Obviously, our student population has increased in EL. And we have 17 retirements in teacher ranks. The NEA and NASA, the budget includes their tentative agreement, which has not been approved by the board yet, and the NESPA and NTA agreements that have been approved by the board at the last board meeting. We've spoken about retirement rate. Our retirement rate is now about 37.5%. It varies based on, there's about 7 or 8 different retirement calculations. Right now it's about 37.5%. We pay about 25.5% after the state paying us back 12%. You've heard me talk about ins and outs. There's about 12% that's in and out, and we get that back. We have spoken also many times about science kits, science textbooks, and some changes in athletics that are real nice things for parents that are in certain sports that will have less to pay than they do in previous years. We've spoken about how we're obviously a service industry, therefore 85% of our budget is salaries and benefits. Here's our original budget summary for the general fund. You'll see that we'll end the year with about just over 11% fund balance, second line from the bottom, in the end of 17-18. Our revenue assumptions that we spoke about earlier, this is how it falls through. Flows through local, primarily because property taxes goes up. For non-homestead, state goes up because of students going up and also our per people going up. And we spoke last time also that our incoming other transactions goes down because our special education costs have declined because we have less students that are categorized as special education now with IEPs. More of them are in 504s or nothing. So the costing of that or the distribution of revenue is based on special ed costs. Expenditures, a whole heck of a lot of numbers in here. You can see it looks like a lot, but it's primarily all based on our settlements with our groups, along with the change in the retirement rate and the change in the insurance benefits. We have an increase in our budget of about $1.8 million from this year to the year starting next week. Our forecast revenue shows just a couple things. We're showing a slight change or increase in our student enrollment, and we do not show in future years, 18, 19, or thereafter, any change in the foundation because it's very premature to do that. In expenditures for 18, 19, and 19, 20, the biggest savings we would have is the assumption that we would have 10 teachers retired. It's always an estimate. We don't know exactly where it's going to fall. The 17 for this year is the high by far from the previous 6 years. So our forecast summary would show at the end of 18-19, the second line from the bottom, we would be at about 10.5%. At the end of 19-20, we'd be at 10%. Our recreation fund we've spoken about, again, we're required by law to adopt a recreation fund budget, and this would have an ending budget fund balance of about $650,000 at the end of 17-18, and that can be dedicated to projects that can be used for the community for recreation and community playground type things. And the food service fund, we also spoken about one a year with about $83,000 next year in fund balance for the food service fund. That, and I went fast because most people have seen this before, and it's been online, it's been in the lobby since actually last week, is the budget for the coming year. There will be some slight changes, again, based on some of the school aid changes if they're approved, but we can't keep changing every time something changes at the state level. We'd be chasing our tail forever, obviously. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, this would be a good time to kind of open a public hearing and have any questions and then go from there.
All right, thank you for the presentation. Does the board have any questions, additional questions for Mr. Barr? Okay, this will open the public hearing. You may step to the podium and ask questions if you would like to ask questions of the budget. Okay, seeing no questions, we will close the hearing and we will move on in our agenda for the evening. So first we have reports to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. This evening we have information for the board from Heather McCaig and Lydia Cadena, along with student members of the high school drama club. They'll give a brief presentation to the board about a proposed trip to Chicago, which will take place now in March instead of November. And so we would invite the representatives from the drama club to the podium.
Hi, I'm Jill Harrington. I'm the point secretary of Drama Club for the 2017-2018 school year. My job is basically to keep track of thespian points, which is like each time someone participates in a show or does crew or anything like that, they get points for that sort of thing, and my job is to keep track of that.
I'm Noelle Drum. I'm alumni liaison for the 2017 to 2018 school board, drama club board. My job is to keep in touch with old alumni and make sure that they're in the loop for all things drama club.
I'm Ryan Swanson. I am the treasurer for this year's drama club board, so I handle all things money and of that sort.
And I'm Griffin Theodore James Hoover. I'm the secretary for the drama club. I've come in contact with all of you before, but that's how it rolls.
And unfortunately, the feature editor-in-chief for the Wildcat Roar is not able to make it tonight, but it's for a good reason. She's doing volunteer work this evening on a mission trip. So I'll be standing in for Addison Lentz. I'm Kate Bennett, the journalism advisor and teacher at the high school.
Okay. So our main goal today was to show you what we will be bringing back to the classroom, because that was kind of a reoccurring question in your last board meeting regarding this on June 1st. Not only is this trip highly educational because of Hamilton, the show, it's historical, but it gives us more of a perspective on what we would like to do with our future in regards to theater or journalism. It exposes us to more real-life experience, as we are seeing like a professional Broadway show, and we will be speaking to Novi alumni that are aspiring to be professional actors or journalists. Yes. Most obviously, the show Hamilton unmasks history in a way never before seen, and in a way that teenagers involved in theater can actually relate to through the use of modern style music, acting, and language. This trip will also give journalism students a first-hand glimpse at the world of news, as they will be covering the trip with live media updates through social media. This trip gives us countless opportunities to explore our potential career paths as theater and journalism students. And not only this, but the shows we are seeing are relevant to our current curriculum. English and theater students both dive deeply into the world of Shakespeare, and seeing a show performed by the Chicago Shakespeare Company gives us a rare first-hand look at the works of Shakespeare through a well-known and respected theater company. The Tony Award-winning musical Hamilton gives the audience an in-depth view of the life of one of the most influential founding fathers of our country. And we learn all about the development of our country and especially how our banking system came to be. And the opportunity to see this show is once in a lifetime, but not only that is the price. The fact that we get to go see it as a group for such a low price. It's affordable, it's attainable, and a show like this doesn't always come around. It's not very common to have a show that's revolutionary. So as I said, educational benefits, just to experience professional Broadway theater, and Chicago is the best known American theater city out of New York in America, and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago has been ranked in the top 10 art universities in the world, so that's a pretty cool thing.
For some of the theatrical benefits, seeing Hamilton would expose us to real professional actors, like 5-time Emmy winner and Grammy nominee Wayne Brady and Karen Livio, which Wayne Brady did graduate from U of M, so that's cool. As theater students, with most of our experience being on a high school stage, this trip would allow us to take a tour around the backstage area of a professional stage, and in the long run, only move us closer to deciding whether or not to pursue a career in theater when we grow up. Getting the chance to buy good tickets to see Hamilton is very hard, but it's also insane how much money we save by buying them as group tickets. And personally, I already know about 20 plus people that are interested in going on this trip just by asking around. According to Rolling Stone, Hamilton has been ranked by one of the best Broadway musicals of all time. Hamilton is the most revolutionary show to hit Broadway in decades, and a chance to see a show so current and groundbreaking is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Judith Rodin, president of the Rockefeller Foundation, stated that the Rockefeller Foundation recognizes Hamilton as a groundbreaking work of genius, and everyone should have the opportunity to see it. This is doubly true of students who are finding their passions and deciding on career paths. Works like this don't come around very often, and when they do, we must make every effort to maximize their reach. We are making a small down payment towards inspiring the next generation of historians, artists, singers, and musicians. It's one that fits squarely within our goal of expanding opportunities to achieve positive impact. Traveling to Chicago to see this groundbreaking show can do nothing but benefit us in the long run.
These slides are out of order. Okay. Got that?
All right. Well, journalism students, as they attend this trip, prior to this trip, leading up to it, throughout the year, there is going to be a greater emphasis on developing their arts and entertainment coverage for the student paper. They've done a phenomenal job over the last several years. We've had many award-winning photographers capturing the images of the shows that are put on, the vast array of performances that take place at the high school. But we're also looking forward to having a greater emphasis in the writing. We always cover every varsity sport at the school, but I want to emphasize to the students the importance of also covering all of the arts as well, since students who are involved in those programs are putting in the same amount of time or more in some cases as students who are varsity athletes per season. So since we cover all of varsity sports, we should be covering all of those arts as well. And this will also give them an opportunity as they travel. This is not just going to be a chill on the bus situation and hang out. This is going to be preparing as they are going down. They'll be working as they're moving along on the bus, interviewing a variety of the students who are going on the trip with them, particularly focusing on the seniors, as this will be an opportunity for them to prepare for their big final edition of the paper they always do with personality profiles. So they'll also be emphasized the writing over the weekend of doing that. They will be working on social media coverage as well, tweeting, and they're going to be kind of competing for tweeting. They'll be competing to write the best tweets, to be able to compete to have the best photos that they will post on Instagram. We don't want to have just this huge overwhelming amount of photos coming through on Instagram through the Wildcat Roar's new site that they're going to be setting up, but we want to be able to have it be the best photos that they can have. So we'll be taking photographs along the way, doing portrait photography while we are there, writing personality profiles, and as well as covering the arts. And we are looking at trying to work into being able to interview some of the folks who are involved in the theater productions we see there, to be able to interview them. And we also have a number of students who are currently in Chicago, both in theater programs as well as in journalism at Northwestern. And so we'll be inviting those students to come and talk with our kids, and our kids to have an opportunity to speak with them. They've had some phenomenal opportunities doing entertainment writing with the Chicago Philharmonic Orchestra, as well as covering the election, working in Washington, D.C., covering the debate in Vegas. So there's some really great stuff there for the students to be able to engage in. And the big thing will be working on deadline and writing as they are there, critiquing with one another as they are there, having people who they can check the accuracy of their quotes immediately, and being able to publish right away. I hope that covers everything. Oh, and the one other part in there we did talk about, with any museums that we go to, we will also be seeking out specifically information related to photography so that they can see the photos that they've been taking, being able to compare those to the arts, as well as analyzing composition and lighting, the way that those things are used in paintings, and to think about how they can use that also in making their photojournalistic compositions more artistic as well. Thank you.
By the way, these two paintings are some of the most famous pieces at the Chicago Art Institute.
So this trip will also help us explore some of our future career choices. We can experience the realities of theater as a career, not just as a hobby, because right now, I can safely say that for a lot of us, it is more than just a hobby. The amount of hours that we put in at the school, weekdays, weekends, it's a lot more than just a little side hobby that we do every once in a while. Chicago is one of the leading places in the United States for theater and for journalism. Exposure to world-renowned photographs and work of arts. We can scout for new colleges and meet with Novi graduates to discuss their experiences pursuing theater or journalism, and the students will move closer to deciding whether or not to pursue a career in theater or journalism.
Yeah, and I think that just about ties it up, so I hope this better convinced you. Mr. Manna, you emailed my mother and said, I was wondering why you thought that this might not happen. You guys were kind of skeptical about it in your June 1st meeting that we thought, and so we hope this helped convince you and change your mind. So thank you.
Any questions?
Does the board have questions for our students or for Ms. Cadena? Mr. Mena?
I do. Well, I'm not skeptical. Certainly, when we get to the point, when we hit the action item for this, I'll listen to the opinions of my fellow board members, but it sounds like a very fun trip. Normally, I'm only concerned about when we have teachers out of the district, a large number of teachers out of the district at the same time, and we have a lot of students that don't get to attend these trips, and they're forced to not necessarily have their normal type of educational environment for that time period. But again, we kind of balance these things out because everybody needs an opportunity to do these type of things. So as far as what I see right now, I'm very supportive of this. I do have a question for you, Ms. Cadena. You kind of mentioned something that kind of piqued my interest. You mentioned a new website for the Wildcat Roar. Can you explain that? Or?
Well, we're trying to increase our opportunities for students to have kind of modern media coverage and to be able to have a more immediate opportunities for reporting. So that's something that we're going to be working on more. We have had a full website in the past, and one of our biggest challenges is finding a student who will work. I have a young man that I'm working with on this, on creating a website that can be kind of passed down from generation to generation, rather than a student who is super knowledgeable in one specific way to create a website, that you have to be able to understand very specific coding language. So we're looking at something that can be more universally used by students. Multiple students could post, things like that. So we are working with a couple of other schools in the state who we have really respectful sites, and kind of using them as guides and coaches for us to be able to be prepared for that for the fall. And starting an Instagram site and being more meaningful and thoughtful and powerful with the use of Twitter as well. So just looking at ways that we can incorporate social media, as well as developing a site that will be more accessible and usable by students.
I'm a big fan of the Wildcat Roar. I always enjoy looking at it. I will tell you, we did have a problem getting it last year. I know this past year, I should say. I know you had been posting it on a website. So if you can do us a favor and make sure that maybe you can figure out a way to forward copies, a PDF version to the board alias, I'm sure my fellow board members would love to see that as well.
Absolutely. For sure.
Other questions from the board? Any presentation? Well, we do thank you for coming and being here. You did a nice job of kind of explaining. I appreciated seeing a little more additional information on the field trip myself and hearing that they're going to get to have some conversations with backstage students. I know that's been a part of what the band has done in New York and some stuff like that, so it's exciting. That's even more exciting. It makes the trip, I think, a little more meaningful for everybody. So thank you very much for being here. Obviously, this won't come up for action for a little bit, so you guys are welcome to stick around or welcome to
a world-class education.
Exactly. So thank you again for your presentation this evening. Our next item is a Neola presentation to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Wayne Peters of Neola will come to the podium and will present their service for the policy and bylaws for the Novi Community School District. We had a presentation earlier this month from another firm, and currently we use Neola, and we thought it would be appropriate for the board to learn more about Neola's service for us. So, Mr. Peters.
Hi, I'm Dr. Wayne Peters. I'm your Neola representative and have been for about 15 years. I've been with the company 18 years, and you were one of my early, in the early years, the person that I spent most time with was Bob Schramm. And I think there were some board members involved at that time too, but that's probably turned over in the years since then. So I was thinking about, if you were not a customer, I knew exactly what I would say to you, to talk about our services. But you've been a customer for a long time, and I thought, but the board's different. I know there's been superintendent changes. You get an invoice from us twice a year, and it's only natural. You might wonder, what do we get for that? What are we paying for? So I'm going to approach it from that side. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the company, the cost that you're currently paying, what you're getting for that, and how that actually comes into being. The process behind what we offer to you. Neola has been in business for about 40 years. It goes back to the days when there was very little school reform. Once in a while, a legislature would pass something that we would call school reform, but they don't write it in saying, if you're a school district, here's what you need to do different. They just write what the legislature wants. So somebody saw a market niche here, I guess. A group of superintendents and university administration professors in the Cleveland-Akron area created this company to kind of interface what the legislature or the federal government or the attorney general or whatever is demanding, and put it into languages. Here's what you need to do differently at the school level to meet this demand. So Neola used to mean Northeast Ohio Learning Associates. But we're in 7 states, and we have over 1,500 districts, about 10% of the U.S. And so it's kind of lost its Neola meaning. So it's just Neola now. It's like KFC is not Kentucky Fried Chicken anymore. It's just KFC. We're centered in 7 states, mostly in the Midwest, Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, West Virginia, and Florida, where the school districts are all county-wide districts. One of our customers, Miami-Dade County, is 350,000 students. So they don't have little districts like we do up here. But again, we have, in Michigan, we have over 480 of the districts. So there's only about 35 that we don't have, and we're working on that. What we were trying to do, as I said, is now, when I talked about how the company was founded, there was very little school reform. About 1990, we had the first Michigan school reform, Public Act 25, that said you had to have a mission statement and 3 to 5 year improvement plans that you constantly updated and bid off more objectives for the future. And then it kind of snowballed after that. Every state association, governor, state superintendent, state school board went to their national meetings, came back to Michigan, and all the other people went back to their states and wanted to do everything that they heard being done in every state. And it just snowballed. If any of you served on the boards or were familiar with them, It was everybody trying to outdo each other. If you are a longtime board member, you will notice something that probably frustrates you. 30 years ago, your board policies were totally an expression of what you wanted for your district. And now that's only about half true. And I know you're aware of that and it must frustrate you. Now legislation is passed saying you must have a policy on this. It must contain these elements. You have to adopt it by a certain date, and you have to send us a copy so we can check you off or we're going to audit you. So it's like we've just taken that subject out of your hands. We don't think you're competent enough as a board to decide what's best for your kids, so we're going to tell you what to do. Unfortunately, the other half of the policies are still totally within your discretion, and there's enough to keep you busy just doing that. But unfortunately, we're headed on this path. And the worst offenders to this are the federal cabinet level departments. Most of the departments that feed into school policies are Department of Education, of course, Department of Labor concerning employees, and Department of Justice, Civil Rights, dealing with harassment, discrimination, disability, and anything along that line. And so you would have a hard time knowing what to say to please them, to please their legislation, and that's why we still kind of have a market niche. So that's how the company came into being. In Michigan, as in all the states, all the associates like me are former superintendents, as is the president of the company. He's a retired Ohio superintendent. And his philosophy is you can't be an advisor to boards about policy if you haven't walked the walk yourself, and you haven't been there, and you don't know what the implications might be of what you're recommending. So that has worked out very well. I was a superintendent for 24 years. I've been doing this for 18 years, so that's over 40 years of working with policy. And I've taken 110 districts in Michigan through the process of building a policy book like I did in your district about 15 years ago. So that's the background to the company. I put together a cost sheet. I talked about cost, and I'm going to hand out, I only have 3 of these. This is a list of our Michigan clients. But the other thing I'm going to hand out is the cost sheet of what you're paying now, and then I'll kind of tell you what you're getting for that. So if I can just start here. And enough for everybody there.
Enough here.
No, there's only 3 there. I'm sorry. I didn't know how many people I was going to be talking to. The main thing that you're paying for now, well, I'll give you a minute to look that over.
Oh, sure.
And see if you have any questions on that. Mrs. Holly also mentioned, I should, as a point of comparison, tell you if you were a brand new customer and just signing up for us, what you would pay nowadays. The building of a policy book is $10,000. Probably a year or 2 after that, you would think about doing the administrative guidelines, which in many federal and state cases are required. They aren't truly optional. And that is also $10,000. I help the districts, I meet with the districts, usually over the course of about a year to get this book built. The update that comes out every 6 months to keep that book current is on my list. $1,225 every 6 months. Most of that goes to the attorneys, not me, and to the office that produces this, but I get a little bit of it. If you put your policies online, which you have done with a search engine, which is very user-friendly, that is $5,400 for a new customer to do that. And that has now an annual update of $650 for any activity on your website throughout the year. Not only reacting to the stuff that we show you, but anything that you initiate throughout the year. And that's to keep your website up to date. The main thing you're paying for is an update. And I brought one with me just to show you, and I'll give it to this gentleman in a minute. But I want to show you what's in it. This is a little thicker than usual. This spring happened to be kind of a perfect storm of things coming together. Activity by our legislature in December, and ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act regulations. They're now kind of hitting the marketplace, and things like that. And then just 2 weeks ago, the new seclusion and restraint policy that you have to adopt during the summer. That was tied up in the State Department head for 4 months. But when we finally got it, we had it within the hands of our clients within 2 weeks. So this is typically what's in an update. The yellow pages up front are an overview. And it's kind of a paragraph or two explaining what's behind each recommendation that we're making to you. Is it state law, federal law, attorney general opinion, a court decision, maybe it's something that is client driven. In other words, a lot of clients were interested in this kind of policy. And so if we write a policy where the original request was from a client, we show it to everybody because it might be of interest to you too. So that's the overview. This is just a little tracking sheet so that Mrs. Holly can keep track of what you did with each policy recommendation. Did you adopt it or table it or reject it or whatever? You will find often, more and more now, information sheets from our various attorneys. Being in 7 states, we have 7 law firms, one in each of those states because they have to be familiar with state-specific law. And we have an 8th one in Washington, D.C. that watches what's coming out of the courts, the federal cabinet departments, Congress, whatever. And so, and that's a nice net. There isn't much that gets by us because we have 8 firms looking for it. So these are updates. Sometimes they're linked to something.
Oh, excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Mr. O'Connor
Do
has a
you
question.
use a Michigan-specific law firm?
Yes, the Varnum Law Firm, which is
Thank you.
headquarters in Grand Rapids. I think they have 5 offices. If you've been to Grand Rapids for a conference at the Amway DeVos Center, it's right across the river, on the west side of the river, on Michigan Avenue. Big tall building with kind of an Art Deco scroll roof to it. But, yes, they are a major Michigan one. So these are heads up from our various law firms. Sometimes they're linked to something that is in this update, or they might just be something that's a year or 2 down the road, and they're giving you a heads up to be thinking about it, be preparing for it. And so, like, there were 5 in here, and they come from 3 of our different law firms. You get a list of annual notices that you're required to give to various entities, your public, your staff, the ISD, the state, various entities, and that changes a little bit every year, and so we update this annually. The one thing I couldn't show you was we keep up to date a generic student handbook. We actually sell it for dirt cheap, but I'm not here to sell it to you. But we know you have a student handbook, and if there's something in legislation that changed policy and guideline and needs to change the language in your student handbook, the same attorneys do this all, and they show you what your new paragraph in the student handbook should be. The one this spring had to change because you've got new rules on suspension, expulsion, seclusion and restraint, bullying, restorative practices, and so there will be several new things in the student handbook. The changes to policy, the recommendations, are in white sheets, and what we do is show you the template, the original template they came from, not your specific one. With 1,400 clients, we just can't print yours off each time. But in it, anything new will be in bold. Really nothing on that page. Well, you'll see one somewhere. We'll go through it. Okay, actually, I can't find them. And also they're tick marked. If it's a very small change, like the one on the first page here is a single word being lined out, and you might not see that. But if you look at the tick mark, it means look closer. Something in that line changed. So these are the changes to policy. You're an administrative guideline client with us, so the changes, this is the only time you see them in blue, and it's just to kind of distinguish from policy in this packet. When they're all cleaned up, they revert to white. But these are guidelines. Some, as I say, is required by law as the policies are, others more optional. First one that leads off, just for example, is a guideline on what you have to do in the next 3 years to ramp up for September of 2020, when you might be retaining your first third grade students who can't meet the new reading standard. And you have duties as a district you have to do each of the next 3 years to get ready for that. So those are the guidelines. When you did guidelines, you got a book of forms from us. Forms, evaluation instruments, sample letters, whatever, tied more to guidelines than policy. And so if there's any changes in that, we want you to keep your forms book up to date if you're doing that. And so we show you the changes in forms. So I will give this to the gentleman. All this, and there was a special I mentioned on the, you can help me. Thank you, sir. This was a special that came out that was purely new ESSA requirements. And like I said on the list, there are no charges for specials. Specials come out like the seclusion restraint that came out 2 weeks ago. It's kind of halfway between our normal scheduled updates, and yet it won't wait. It has to be adapted by this summer. So we do a special, and there's no charge for specials. And lately it seems like there's at least 1 or 2 special every year. So that's the main thing that you're paying for. Because you are a online customer with us too, whatever changes you select in policy, guideline, and forms, etc., we not only give you replacement pages for any manuals that you're keeping up to date, but we make the same changes on your online version, which again has a great search engine. Let me mention a word about, because we do mention it in one of the early yellow sheets too. We warranty anything that we recommend to you, because we've paid good money to Barnum's to make sure this is legally compliant. And you'll see in some of the policies, like civil rights or that, in the citations on the last page, this policy may be crafted to comply with 15 different laws, which is hard to do, you know. And the seclusion and restraint one, for example, had to take what the legislature passed in December and graft it and integrate it into a policy we've had on seclusion and restraint for 12 years that came from the Michigan Board of Education. The legislation didn't replace it. It kind of overlaid it. It left most of it in place. It overlaid it with new requirements from the legislature. So that's how the attorneys make their money. How do we get to this update that we do? We have found through experience there is enough legislation, and like I say, it's snowballing, it's getting worse, not better. Court decisions, attorney general opinions, that we put out 2 updates a year to try to keep you current. We have a vast net, not only the 8 law firms I mentioned, but having 1,500 clients is a great net in itself. Because sometimes the first inkling of something new coming down the road is a letter to one of our districts in one of our states. It's only the first letter. Others are going to hit all our other clients. But it gets us alert and working on it ahead of time. Also, not everything happens first in Michigan. You know that everybody probably now has a defibrillator policy. But Ohio had defibrillators in schools years before Michigan did. And so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel when the Michigan law passed. We took the Ohio one as a basis and, of course, converted it so it made sense in Michigan. Recently, we got a request from a Michigan district asking about a policy on school uniforms in a public school, which is not a big deal in Michigan. But it has been a big deal for years in Illinois, especially around Chicago. Both from uniforms don't embarrass kids who can't afford designer clothing, and it also cuts down on violence where one kid is mugging another for his designer sunglasses or his Jordan basketball shoes or something like that. So it was very easy for us to take our Illinois policy and convert it to what this client wanted in Michigan. So it's great to have 1,500 eyes and ears as well as the 8 law firms. In your agreement with us way back, it said, just as you benefit from policies that might have originated somewhere else, you may someday be the first one to write a great policy on a new subject. And our agreement says that we can share that with our other clients. So it's a two-way street. You help them and they help you. So anyway, this stuff rolls in from the various sources, goes to the attorneys at Barnes, and they begin to, flesh out the next update. The associates meet about 2 months ahead of time to have a first look at it. All the associates in Michigan will meet in Grand Rapids in late July to get the first look at the September update. And we have input, and you know that for the last 7 or 8 years we are joined with MASB as far as policy services. So Brad Vanasek or one of his assistants will sit in a meeting with all the Neola people. And and that has strengthened, that's another important voice to have at the table. And we work it up until the last week before it's published. The dates I gave, March and September, are pretty much where they come, but if there was something big coming and we knew it was going to be released in 2 weeks, we would hold up the update to get that in. And often, like I say, they pass things with a very short timeline for you to adopt it. They must think you don't have anything else to do running your schools. But
I think Mrs. Gibson's.
yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I wanted to
I
go
took my
back.
glasses off, and that's always dangerous.
I wanted to go back to your comment about you provide a warranty
Yes.
on any policy.
Oh, that's
related
right.
to
I should have
district. Could you
followed.
really explain what the warranty
Okay.
actually would cover?
Okay. If you are sued or get a bad audit from some agency because you relied on our language, we go to court, if you like, and spend money up to the amount that you paid for policies and guidelines in the first place. And we can either take the lead or we can assist your district attorney or whatever. And the reason we feel pretty comfortable with that is if it's anything that that came from a big agency like civil rights, or in Michigan now we have this phenomena of trying to please the FBI and the state police every year on the handling of fingerprint records. Finance will write the policy or guideline, then they will send it to that agency and say, this is what we're proposing to release to our clients. Would you please look it over and tell us if there's anything missing or we've said something wrong or that. And so they vet it for us. And the same way with the Office of Civil Rights or the Office of Education. And so by the time we release it to you, we're pretty comfortable that it's going to survive an audit or would be upheld in court. Now the other thing that happens that we have no control over is once in a while you get a local auditor who comes in, the clients have told us this, and they say, I don't care what my state or office, the national office agreed to, I'm your auditor and you're going to do it this way. And so in cases like that, you have to do what they say or they'll never leave you alone. And then down the road, you can slowly convert, if you want to, back to the Neola version. But, auditors have to find something wrong or they're not doing their job. And I said when I was in the Army and we had inspections, we deliberately left something dirty for the inspector to write up or else he would never leave. And it's kind of the same, it's just human nature. But anyway, that's our guarantee. Now, the other side of the coin is if you take our policy and you write your own language that goes a different direction, we don't warranty that. You're on your own. But whoever wrote it for you, your local attorney or some other source, be sure and ask them, will they warranty it? Will they stand behind it? because you need somebody to stand behind it to keep you out of trouble. But that's the warranty.
Okay.
And it's I've only seen it used once in my 18 years. And it wasn't really a fault of Neola. It was, when we talk about open meetings and the public's right to video or record a meeting, the policy says people should let you know ahead of time that they're coming so that you can set them up in a way that doesn't disturb your meeting. We had a superintendent in the UP took that to mean that if the person didn't contact him ahead of time, he barred them from the meeting, which you can't do. It's an open meeting. So it wasn't so much our language was bad, it was just the person read it wrong. But we were there, we were in court, sitting with them and depending on them. So that's the warranty. Thank you. I should have pursued.
That's great. Okay.
So anyway, it starts with the attorneys and this input from many sources, and we fine tune it up to the last minute. And then we send, through the mail, we send the kind of packet that I sent around. You're a virtual private network customer of ours, so we also post it down in our big server near Columbus, Ohio. We have a file for Novi, Michigan. And so they will post the update on there. And if you know how VPNs work, it's basically a way to cut down on the delay of mailing and the cost of mailing. You put in some codes and you basically open a tunnel through your own firewall. And you reach down to Neola's server in Ohio and bring the materials back to you so you can work on them. And when you're done and the board has approved whatever they're going to do, you once again go through the tunnel and put them back on our server, and you send the company an email that Novi has just, put their wishes from the last update online, please, or on the VPN, please process them, and put them on our website and stuff like that. So we're coming up with an even new platform. Microsoft notified us about a year and a half ago that VPN had kind of hit the wall as far as being able to tweak it for new applications. So they built a new platform for us which will have a lot of life in it. And we've been beta testing it in Wisconsin this past year. And I think it must be doing well because when the associates go to Grand Rapids this summer, we're going to get training on how the new platform works. So, and that, they say, will turn the turnaround time from maybe a couple of weeks now to days. It'll just have a lot more capacity for the future. So,
When is that expected to roll out here?
I don't know. I hope to hear at this meeting. They wanted to beta test it in one state and work the bugs out. And so I have not heard if they're ready to release it in Michigan. But
So the current
if we do, we'll make a big splash. You'll get a letter from the boss.
But the current turnaround time is about 2 weeks. Is that what you're saying?
Well, am I being optimistic? Well, she's the one that does it.
Okay.
What's the turnaround time?
It depends on the number of policies.
Oh, how long she sent in?
Yeah, yeah. That last batch that I sent in, I think in December, it took them until February, 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Yeah, but
Okay.
there were a lot.
Okay.
There was a lot. This time, I just sent in the ones that were approved, and so we'll see. Usually, I'm going to say that 2 weeks is probably about right.
Okay.
Wow.
So that's our goal.
About a 2-week turnaround time from the time that we send them back to the time that they're on our website and posted. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
When the package comes in, it goes to typists who are going to do the paper. They're going to enter it on the server first of all,
Right.
and then it's going to go to the print shop for pages. But then another copy goes to the webmaster, who is a guy that works all night. He found out he couldn't work in the same building with 32 typists, so he comes in about 9 at night, works till 6 in the morning when the building's quiet. Yes.
I have a philosophical question. In the policies, first of all, the policy, if we were to look at it in print, is a lot of pages.
Yeah.
We're grateful that we have it online.
Yes.
But a lot of it is actually quoting the law. So it would say, we're going to comply with the Open Meetings Act, but then it would have everything about the Open Meetings
Sure.
Act listed.
Sure.
Another service provider suggests by having everything listed that goes with that law,
Right.
then if a little bit is changed, you've got to, keep up with that.
Right.
But the real thing is you have to comply with blah, blah, blah law. And then how you do that is in the administrative guidelines. So
Right.
their philosophy is a much leaner document
Well,
that it seems like we could manage a little bit better in terms of staying up to date with it. So if you could just talk a little bit to your philosophy and having
it's
that
not
all
a
spelled
philosophy
out.
thing. You might think it is, but no, we don't have a philosophy to make things longer or harder for you. So much of the stuff that I said is no longer, that's been taken away from you, that's no longer your discretion. The actual law said what you have to have in it. Give you an example. In discrimination, every district has to have 2 compliance officers, one male and one female. And that used to be carried in the guidelines until a few years ago the feds said, no, we want that elevated to policy so that we know the board has signed off on all the guarantees or the conditions in there. And it was not I'm not being flippant, but when somebody says we want a real short or real thin policy book, I say, which laws don't you want to follow? Because so many of the laws now say you will have all this information in your policy. That's in the law. The other thing is, I guess maybe is a little philosophical. The ordinary citizen, the parent, doesn't have access to a law firm or a big stack of law books, and they wouldn't even know what all to search. If they want to know how this district is going to be run to benefit their kids, where will they find it except in your policy book? That's the place that everything is supposed to be for your transparency. It isn't any place else. It's in your board policy book. What you're going to do, what you have to do, the penalties if you don't do it, and stuff like that. And so I will tell you, if an auditor came in and said, where is all this stuff that you should have? If you said, well, we're going to follow the law, whatever it is, just take it for granted, we're going to follow the law. That is not going to get you through the audit. You're going to be written up instantly. And you created an opening for anybody that wants to sue you. So thank God, like you said, it is online, and you don't have to carry around a 20-pound book. But to be safe, whatever we say you should have in there, there's a reason for it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. I hope I didn't offend.
No, I mean, we have to figure out
Well,
what's
we
best for
get
us. By
asked
the
that a
way,
lot.
I think 12 years ago when Pete Dion became the superintendent and Mr. Schramm was still here, that was when we switched to Neola because I am 12 years on the board and I was
Yeah.
part of that. So I don't think it was 15, but we have been, you're using your service for quite a period of time.
And it was different, and it was thinner years ago. But
Yeah.
it's not just you. Ask somebody that's in hospital administration or college administration. They're getting hit with the same
Right.
stuff.
Yep.
And their policies have gotten longer too.
Mr. Mehta, did you have a question?
I do. One of the other things that I notice is you have the same language, policy language, in multiple policies, multiple sections. Can you explain why that's needed?
Yeah, you will find that in the things that come out of multiple federal cabinet levels. I'll tell you, discrimination, harassment, something like that. In Washington, Department of Justice, Department of Labor, and Department of Education all have their own non-discrimination paragraph. And nobody there sits down in a meeting and says, let's standardize this. They don't care whether theirs applies with, this is their turf. And so we have actually 3 non-discrimination paragraphs issued by those 3 departments. And what Barnum's does is sits down and synthesizes them into one that satisfies all 3. It's a bit longer than any individual one because it's a combination of all 3. And that one paragraph, because in a lot of cases you have to take that paragraph and print it on your materials. And so that's another reason why it should be one paragraph for everything rather than, if something you're printing has to do with labor, you'd have to employment. You'd have to make sure you had labor's definition of non-discrimination to go on that notice. But in another instance, you might have to have the Justice Department paragraph on non-discrimination for a posting on disabilities or something like that. So we came up with one combined one, which you do see a lot. You see it everywhere it would pop up. But it does satisfy. A quick way, again, I say, is look at the last page of those heavy with law policies, and you will see 12 to 15 laws that this thing is carefully crafted to satisfy, to get you through an audit, to avoid a lawsuit, to keep you off the front page of the free press tomorrow.
But again, I being on the policy committee, I've seen this happen multiple times, and Ms. Holly could correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen where we've actually had the same text, multiple policies that are almost identical. They're just for different sections. Am I correct?
So they're coming from 3 different sources.
So we have to have 3
Yes.
different versions by law of the policy.
No, what you're looking at is one. Well, I was talking about the non-discrimination paragraph. We've standardized that. Depending on whether it's denial of educational opportunity or employment discrimination or civil rights, there could be a different complaint procedure. They differ slightly. Like I said, you have to have compliance officers, 1 man and 1 woman by law. And the names of those 2 people appear in 14 different policies that come from different agencies. And it would be great if somebody in Washington said, hey, let's make it simple for the folks in the heartland. Let's standardize our language. It does not happen. They send us what they want, and we do our best to, satisfy them. And if we can do a little combining, we do. Looked like there was a question.
Well, I think that you're misunderstanding the question.
I probably am.
That's okay. We have sections on personnel and sections on property and sections on staff, students, like all those different sections. And
Yes.
sometimes the policies that we get look like they're basically exactly the same, but they're all different numbers for those different sections.
Yes, if you look closely, there are differences within them. Take discipline or something like that. In the administrator section, the administrator, of course, is the one who has discipline things brought to them. So it's written from their perspective. In the teacher or professional staff version, those are probably the people on the front line that first encounter the offense and are reporting the discipline to administration. In the support staff, we make an assumption that it might be unwise to send a custodian or a cook or a bus driver up against an angry parent or their attorney or something like that. And so in the support staff version, it has the person reporting it to their supervisor, an administrator, who then knows how to take it from there. So if you look carefully, there are subtle differences.
Help answer your question.
We really try hard not to gum it up with stuff you don't need. But there's, we don't make this up. We're just out here playing catch, for everything that comes.
We get that. We're a part of that, that ball game as well. Are there other questions that the board has? They would like to pose before, do you have other things that you'd like to still share?
No, I just want to tell you, this isn't in your agreement with us, but this is just me. Whenever we have an update, I come and spend as much time as possible. Usually it's somewhere between 1 and 2 hours, depending how thick the packet is. But I also, if the board requests, I'll do this with a board policy committee. I'll do it with the full board before a regular meeting. I do it with the full board as part of the agenda on a regular meeting. Did that the other night in Mount Clemens. And I don't charge for those. My salary comes from my little bit of the update fee that you're paying. I'm not in this to make money. It's kind of fun. I kind of miss being around schools. It's, I'm still around schools, but I'm not the target like when I was a superintendent. So I enjoy this. And it's built my it's built my clientele. You know, when people need policies, they talk to each other, and somebody says, well, Neola does a lot for us and treats us pretty good. So
Right.
use me any way you want.
Okay.
If you need me at a board meeting, sometimes there's a hot issue, and you folks have to survive. Superintendent of the board, you have to survive. A couple years ago, for example, when the feds changed the meaning of sex discrimination from simply gender to LGBT, and, all that probably was not a problem in the Novis of my area. But in my smaller town, rural towns, that was a big deal. And so the board invited me up to basically tell the board publicly, here's the change. It comes from the feds. You have to do this. And you can almost see the board looking at the audience and saying, see, we have to do this. We don't have any choice. Don't take it out on us. I understand that. Like I say, I was in the business for a long time. So use me any way that helps you, and there's no charge for that. So.
Great.
I do have a,
Go ahead, Mrs. Hood.
I do have a quick question, and it might be an internal question. When Dr. Peters was talking about the services, he mentioned the administrative guidelines for a $10,000 fee, and I know we have spent a lot of time recently on policy, but do we have an established administrative guideline book?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you did yours, I think, in 2 years. Back, as soon as we were done with policy, you did the guidelines. And they differ quite. It's not the same thing rehashed. The policy is kind of the parameters around a subject, what the board has to do or wants to do. And the guidelines are down at the lower levels, how to do it. And while your policies have to be publicly read and adopted at public meetings, guidelines do not. You could find a guideline that's not working and you want to change it. You can change it today and start implementing it tomorrow, which you can't do as quickly with a policy.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, if there are no additional questions, we really do thank you for being here and
Okay,
filling us
you're
in
quite
on the
welcome.
service. And it's the first time that most of us have heard any of that. So,
Well, and like I say, you deserve to know what you're getting for your money.
right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
You can keep on it.
Okay, great. We will add some of that to, that we didn't have copies for everyone to the Friday update. Okay, moving on to our action items. We will.
Comments.
Excuse me,
Agenda
forgive me. We have our first opportunity for comments from the audience related to agenda items. If there is anyone that is with us this evening that would like to make comments related to our agenda, we do ask that you fill out a green card, that you be mindful and considerate of others and show common courtesy. Is there anyone that would like to speak to the board this evening? All right. Seeing none, we can move on now, correct? Okay, we will move on to our consent items. Dr. Matthews.
We have a consent agenda this evening of minutes from the meetings of June 15th and the executive session minutes of June 15th as well, and then approval of bills, the check register, and the purchase card statements.
I would entertain a motion.
That's
Mr. Nunn?
Yeah, I move that the board accept consent items A and B as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Cadwell. Is there any discussion or comments about the items? All right. Normally there are not for consent. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Motion carries 6-0. Does anyone need a break before we move into our action items this evening? Okay, we will move into our action items. The first item is our personnel report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you. And I will turn to Ms. Diglio for the personnel report for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. I'd like to make the recommendation for 5 new hires. Allison Gray, who will be teaching at Village Oaks. Melanie Greslick, who will be at the middle school teaching English language. Leanne O'Shaughnessy, who will be at Novi Meadows teaching special education. Cassandra Sparks, who will be at Village Oaks. She will be our new speech pathologist. And Nicholas Hugler, who is in the audience this evening, who will also be at Village Oaks teaching this fall. I also have 3 recommendations for resignation or retirement. Megan Ashkenagi has been offered a principal position in Berkeley, and we're really happy for her. Our loss, but congratulations to her. That's been something she's been pursuing for a while, so we're excited for her. Christina Fisher is an adult ed teacher who resigned, and Nancy Lodwick has put in her retirement from Orchard Hills.
All right, I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Glebzinski.
Motion to approve personnel report is presented.
Support. It's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mrs. Hood. Are there comments or questions? Mr. O'Connor.
Any of these new hires, have they been hired above the level 1 step?
Some of them have.
And which ones and why?
I have a spreadsheet in my office I can go get. I wasn't expecting, sorry about that. Mostly it is due to experience, but I can go get that information.
If I could have them Friday update, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Sure.
And Mr. Tiggo, does that happen when you have a teacher who's coming from another district, or an experienced teacher that's moving in another district? Is that generally the situation in those cases?
Yes, it is. Much of it is. I can tell you that the most I have brought in is a teacher with 20 years experience, and they've been as high as 4 steps. That's the highest I've gone. So it is not as though we're giving or hiring above 1 or a lot of steps. So it happens. What I try to do, in all honesty, is I compare their current rate in which they're working, and I try to allow them to come in as at least of what they've been paid, and I don't want them to go backwards as much as possible. So where I can help negotiate that on our end to get the best teacher, I'll do that. But it's I'll look at what they're making currently and where they fall on our scale and how many years of experience.
Okay. Mrs. Glebzinski.
I'd just like to thank Nicholas. I don't know, do you go by Nick or do you go by Nicholas?
Either's fine. Either's
Okay,
fine.
well, thank you very much for taking the time to come to the board meeting. It looks like you're a Spartan.
Yes,
through
ma'am.
and through. We kind of like that, some of us.
Great.
But
Some of
it also looks like you might have had to go out of state to get some experience, and now you're coming back to Michigan.
I taught for 2 years in North Carolina, in Cumberland County. They do countywide schools there.
Yeah, can you go up to
Sure.
the podium?
I wish some of the high schoolers were here to teach me a little bit more poise. They did such a good job earlier. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'd like to start off by saying thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really excited to partner with you all to service the students of Novi. Super excited. Initially, after completing colleges, I put out lots of applications around the area because I'm from Metro Detroit, from the east side, and I got all my bites on my hook from the southeast mostly. So I went to North Carolina for a couple years to teach. And then the past 6 years I've been back in Roseville, Michigan, working for National Heritage Academies.
Oh, that's where that is. Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell from the list where that is. Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the opportunity you got.
Okay. Are there other questions about our personnel report? I'll just make a quick comment. I had the privilege of having Megan Ashkenani teach the Leader in Me class, or a lot of the new hires actually were there, and a few older teachers as part of the Shoulder Series last year, and she just did a fabulous job. I could tell that she was really going places, and I know that's something that she's been pursuing. So while I am very, very sorry that she will be leaving us, I do share your excitement that she's found a place to share her considerable talent as an administrator. And Nancy Lodwick has been with our district for a very long time, so I'm sorry to see that experience go as well, but it looks like we've got some great new hires. So thanks for being so on top of it. I see we've got the resignation from Megan on here, and we also have the new hire as well. So great that we're getting things done before the school year starts for our students. All right. So if there's nothing additional on our personnel report, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the personnel recommendations as presented? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Seeing that passed 6-0, we will move on to our maintenance vehicles. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. At our June 15th meeting, we presented the need to purchase 2 new maintenance vehicles, and if you have additional questions or if Mr. Barr has additional information he can share with you. We also have Mr. Dragoo, who is keenly aware of these maintenance vehicles in the audience to answer any questions you might have as well. Mr. Barr.
Thank you. As stated 2 weeks ago, we presented before you 2 maintenance vehicles for replacement. The one question was brought up by Mr. Cook at last meeting was diesel versus become regular gasoline vehicles. And just a couple things you can't hear, but I'll still share them, was we've had bad experience in the past with 3 diesel plow trucks with transmissions, and we've had great experience with normal gas trucks. They cost about $6,000 to $7,000 more for each diesel truck versus a non-diesel truck. And to be honest, if our mechanics had their choice, they would take every bus that is a diesel bus and move it to a regular gas bus if possible, dealing with emission sensors and things like that. So we're very comfortable, as is the city. All of the city's pickup trucks, which these are just like, also use trucks that's similar to what we're purchasing. So before you is a recommendation to purchase 2 vehicles that would come in before the winter season this November/December.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Hood?
That in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, the purchase of maintenance vehicles be awarded to Signature Ford in the amount of $59,062. NBC Truck Equipment in the amount of $6,748. And the Truck and Trailer Specialties in the amount of $27,276, with funds expended from the general fund.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Glowzinski. Is there additional comments or discussion on part of the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have our Budget Amendment 1. We had this on our agenda last time. I would entertain a motion. I didn't do that properly kind of before, first, and then we can have our discussion. Mr. Mena.
Yeah, I move that Budget Amendment 1 is presented be approved by the Novi Community School District Board of Education per the attached resolution.
Support.
It has been moved by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Glowzinski. Is there additional comments or questions about Budget Amendment 1? Mr. Oak.
I just see the numbers changing just a little bit from the last time, so is there anything we need to know about, or?
No, it was really just between.
It looks just like about 600,000 or 700,000, but I just.
No, we didn't change anything by 700,000 from last board meeting. Not for the amendment. We're just on the amendment. We didn't.
Okay, I'm sorry, I must be looking at the wrong. Okay.
Do you need a minute?
If you want to go to the next and go through with you, yeah, we didn't change
No,
anything.
you didn't change, that's fine.
Okay. Any other additional comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0. All right, next is our original budget for 2017-18. We heard the public hearing on this just earlier. I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Glowzinski.
I move that the 2017-18 original budget as presented be approved by the Novi Community School District Board of Education per the attached resolutions.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glowzinski and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Is there comments or discussion about this item? Mr. O'Connor.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with this budget. I think it's a lot of good work. I know that we had a couple of work sessions over it, and I'll support it, but there is one line item that I'd like to see adjusted after we begin the new fiscal year. We've only budgeted $200,000 for merit pay, and I really think it should be more. Last year, this board budgeted $100,000 for merit pay, and we didn't even use it to reward, our great employees. And now, over the last 2 months, we're looking, since we had our last budget workshop in March, I believe our retirements went up from 12, and if you add this one, I think up to 18 retirements for this year. Is that correct? So we're looking at almost an additional $300,000 in savings from the last time we visited this in March. So I think it'd be great that if we could put some of that additional $300,000 into a more robust merit program as opposed to the $200,000 that were in that's being proposed now. Other than that, I think it's a solid budget, but I think that's something that we should look at after the new fiscal year.
We are bringing to the board a discussion about merit pay in August, so it might be an appropriate time to talk about it.
Okay. Terrific. Other comments or questions about the 2017-18 budget? All right. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have the Drama Club field trip to Chicago. I would like to entertain a motion.
On reading the motion, it should be noted that the dates have changed to March 13th through 15th of 2018. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the resolution does not have those dates listed. So in the recommendation, it should note it's March 13th through 15, 2018.
Okay. Thank you. Wow, 2018.
Those are 3 dates, but you said they were going to be gone 4.
No.
It is 13, 14, okay.
It's Tuesday through Thursday.
Is it Tuesday through Thursday?
Mhm.
Okay.
They leave at 4:30 on Tuesday.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
No problem.
So, is somebody ready to tackle that motion?
I move that the Novi Community School Board of Education approve the Novi High School Drama Club trip to Chicago, Illinois for the dates of March 13th through the 15th of 2018.
Thank you, Mrs.
Support.
Stevenson. It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson, supported by Mr. O'Connor. Is there additional comments about the field trip? Mrs. Glodzinski?
Yeah, and when this was first brought to the board in June, I did make a comment that I really struggled with students missing school days for the productions and the museums. And I really appreciate the presentation of the students. This isn't a reflection on their presentation. However, I think a number of the things can be accomplished without having to go to Chicago. Now, I know they're world-renowned Broadway there and world-renowned journalism school, but I was just at the Kennedy Center last weekend, and the Broadway production that I saw, 4 of the people, including the lead, were University of Michigan grads, Bachelors of Fine Arts. So the ability to talk to people that are in theater and journalism is available within our state. Michigan State has a wonderful communication program in journalism. It may not be, Northwestern, but there are opportunities to do that. Also, Hamilton's going to be at the Wharton Center in East Lansing next year. So you could accomplish the trip and potentially have more people be able to go because it's not the overnight expenses. And there are a number of Broadway shows that come to Fisher Theater that would give students the local opportunity as well. I appreciate that Hamilton is relevant to the curriculum. I think it's a great program to see. I think it's important when kids are searching out what their college majors are that they network the best way that they can. I think a lot of times families can help their students do that. Well, a club gelling and things I appreciate, but I'm going to stick with I'd rather see the students in the classroom.
Are there other comments or questions about the Drama Club field trip? Mr. O'Connor?
I think it's a great trip, and I see nothing wrong with them going, and I don't see why they had to go through a dog and pony show. I never saw what the issue was in the first place. I think it's a great idea, and I'm glad they're going to bond with Novi grads that were in those similar programs, and I support it 100%.
And Mrs. Hood?
I will add something. As the kids were talking tonight, and they did it with poise. They were. I am always impressed by our students. It made me think when I was a junior in high school at Utica Eisenhower. Our Western Literature Club took a trip to Stratford-on-Avon in Canada and saw Peter Ustinov in King Lear, and we had studied King Lear, and I still remember that trip today, and it was a fabulous experience. And I think, and it's not something that I would have been able to do. My parents would not have done that. And I think this is a nice opportunity for our kids to do this, to go to Chicago. I don't think a lot of our kids make it to Chicago, but I also think that seeing the production, seeing behind the scenes of really a Broadway level play will be valuable, and along with all the journalism and history activities that the teachers have planned. So and the 2 days of school is a concern. I agree with Mrs. Globzinski on that, but I think the other experiences, the life experiences, can outweigh that in the amount of preparation they have. So thank you.
Other comments? Mr. Mena?
To Dr. Matthews, my assumption is that all of these students going on a trip need to get parent permission still. I mean, that's how it was back in the day, right?
Correct.
So and that's probably mostly the reason why I would support this. I still always default to the notion that parents know what's best for their particular students. I'm always concerned with teachers being out of the district and those students, again, and I mentioned that earlier, those students who now have to have, a couple days where there are subs teaching those classes. And I'm assuming that's what's going to happen in this situation as well. But regardless, I'll go ahead and support this one. I too think that it would be a good experience for them as well.
I'll just say that I don't disagree with some of Mrs. Gobzinski's comments. Hopefully down the road, maybe even next year, they'll be able to go to Wharton Center. But for this year, with these kids and the fact that they reached out to us twice to come and speak and felt like they needed to, I like that they put something together. I also like that they've shifted now from missing 3 days to 2 days, which I think is much better than the lengthier period of time that they had originally scheduled to be gone. So I appreciate that, and I'd be supportive of the trip for this year to see the show. I don't know that it's going to be available there for a tremendous length of time. Mrs. Stevenson.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with them going on this trip, and I also think we also need to start focusing on the fact that some of our athletics, when they take trips, they're gone for a couple of days too. So, that's athletics, and this is a educational experience, and those athletic events are not educational always.
As we see coming up on our agenda. All right, without any further discussion, we will go ahead and call the question. All those in favor of the Drama Club field trip to Chicago, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1. Next, we have a field hockey trip to Chicago. And this is the first time on their agenda. So
This is a trip that they have taken previously, but it was they went to Pittsburgh previously, and this year they're going to Chicago. And so we bring it for action this evening so that they can make appropriate communication to the team over the summer. We bring it because they have taken this trip at least 2 years previously, but it was going to Pittsburgh instead of Chicago.
I would entertain a motion. Mr. Mena?
Okay, I'll move that the board approve the Field Hockey Invitational Tournament in Chicago, Illinois on September 22nd through the 23rd, 2017.
Is there support? Been moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Hood. Is there discussion on this item? Or comments? All right, well, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the field hockey trip to Chicago, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have a varsity cheerleading camp trip to Ohio.
Ashley Kiernan, the head cheerleading coach, is requesting board approval for the Novi varsity cheer team to attend the 3-day overnight North American Spirit Cheer Camp at the Kalahari Resort in Sandusky, Ohio, July 28th to the 30th of 2017. For the past 11 years, the team has participated in the Alma College Cheer Camp. This advanced skills camp will have expert guest instructors from around the nation. This is an excellent team building opportunity for our varsity cheer team as well as being able to gain valuable cheerleading skills. The cost is approximately $340 to cover the cost of transportation, food, and lodging. And we bring this for action, recognizing that it has not come to the board twice as is required. This was presented to the high school not in time for us to bring it to the board twice. And so we are working with our coaches so that they know timelines better, but we bring it because it is for the month of July.
I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Gobzinski?
That the Novi Community School Board of Education approved the North American Spirit Cheer Camp in Sandusky, Ohio, July 28th to July 30th, 2017.
It's been moved by Mrs. Gobzinski and supported by Mrs. Hood. Is there additional comments or questions about this item on our agenda? All right, I do appreciate, I had sent Dr. Matthews a note because I noticed that the timelines hadn't quite been met in terms of when the request was given to the high school. So I think we do need to work on that piece of it to make sure that the coaches understand why we do that. And part of that is fundraising, things like that that people need to plan, and maybe that's something we need to relook at as a Board of Governance and Policy Committee, perhaps even. I know one more thing, but to look at how we do that, what our policy says, and whether or not it's currently working for our staff, students, and the district. So, if there is no further discussion, all those in favor of the varsity trip to Ohio, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0.
Mrs. Murphy, could we take a 5-minute break before we get into the
I was actually
contract?
going to suggest that. Yeah, we will take a 5-minute break, so it's 8:30 now. We will return at 8:35.
Thank you.
And we are back to our regularly scheduled meeting of June 29th. And we are ready to take up our Novi Educational Association contract. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. A tentative agreement has been reached with the Novi Education Association. The administration recommends the contract agreement with the NEA be approved. The NEA and district bargaining teams met on several occasions to negotiate a new collective bargaining agreement. The current Novi Education Association contract expires on June 30th, 2017. The administration and the Novi Education Association have reached a tentative agreement for the contract beginning July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2019. And so we discussed this with the board in closed session 2 weeks ago, and Ms. Diglio and Mr. Barr or I could entertain questions if you have, but we would recommend that the Board of Education approve the tentative agreement that was reached with the NEA.
Okay. I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Glodzinski.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve the tentative agreement reached with the Novi Education Association for the contract beginning July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2019.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glodzinski and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Is there comments about this? Mr. O'Connor.
I assume that the bargaining unit did agree to
The bargaining unit has approved.
do we know what the percentage was or what the vote was?
97%.
97%.
97%, thank you.
Mrs. Glodzinski.
I'd just like to say thank you to the bargaining team, both for the union as well as the administration. I know it takes a lot of time and patience and effort, and I appreciate that we're in June and we're getting this done. That's not true of a lot of districts, so thank you for the administration's leadership on this.
Other comments or discussion about our contract? Mr. O'Connor.
Just a couple comments. I am just thrilled that both sides were in alignment in terms of the philosophy of what we were both sides trying to do here in terms of the movement on the salary schedule, especially with our teachers with less years of experience. Not only was it great that both sides came together, but it was a good cultural shift for our district, because we as a board have really supported this, making sure that those teachers that have only been here for 3, 4, 5 years, that we really want to keep them, and moving them up that salary schedule is really a real key negotiating point for this board. And I think that's great that it was accomplished and that everyone agreed to it. And in fact, great minds met on that issue. Secondly, I'm also thrilled that we are maintaining the philosophy of having increases based on performance and not seniority or years of experience. We still have steps in here, and that's fine, but at least it's based on effective or highly effective performance. And I think that's important to move our culture, more toward a performance-based compensation system.
If there's nothing further, I did receive a note from Mr. Cook, who couldn't be here, that he and I offered to read us some information that he wanted to share about this issue. So I'll read real quickly what he had wrote. So from Mr. Cook: transparency. Current contracts are posted for the community to see. Most of Novi contracts have been negotiated recently. The board has a summary of the changes to these contracts. Changes include compensation and editorial changes. What the board does not have is a copy of the tentative contract. Simple 3- and 4-letter words have great meaning and carry a lot of power. It was once said, trust but verify. Without having a copy of the tentative agreement to verify what the editorial changes are and or mean, the board must blindly trust. While this may be okay with some board members, with others it's not. The board expects complete and accurate background information in order to make an informed decision. Having a copy of the tentative agreement would fall under having complete and accurate information. So that was the statement from Mr. Cook. I would personally echo Mr. O'Connor's comments. I think that you were right on. It's a great shift in the right direction, and we're glad that at the bargaining table it was a great meeting of the minds, and that you guys did a great job. So thank you for the timeliness of it, and also for the effort to really shift that, make that cultural shift for our teachers in our district. I think it's a great thing for everyone. All right, if there's seeing no further comments or questions, we will vote on the Novi Educational Association contract. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0. The next item on our agenda are administrative contracts. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Current administrative contracts expire on June 30th, 2017. Recommended that the superintendent be authorized to extend administrative contracts for those listed administrators, high school principal, the assistant principal, the athletic director, middle school assistant principal, the Meadows principals, the elementary principals, director of finance, director of community and adult education, director of student growth and accountability, director of maintenance, director of student services, director of transportation, director of athletics, coordinator of Title I and Title III, the early childhood coordinator, the adult alternative ed coordinator, the MTSS 504 coordinator, the maintenance supervisor, and the public relations and communications specialist. Additionally, an elementary principal contract will be extended for 1 additional year. The superintendent recommends that these contract extensions will include a 1.5% salary increase for 17-18 and 18-19. Additionally, the early childhood coordinator salary adjustment will be to $66,758. And so we would recommend that the board approve these contracts that would take effect on July 1st.
All right, we'll entertain a motion. Mrs. Glebzinski.
That the Novi Community School District Board of Education extend the contracts of all listed administrators through June 30th, 2019, and an elementary principal contract to be extended through June 30th, 2018 as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Do we have discussion on the items? Mrs. Glebzinski.
Yeah. The administrative contract or these positions report to Dr. Matthews, who does their evaluation, and all of the employees who are being recommended for the 2-year contract extensions have been rated effectively or highly effective, and I support that. We evaluate the superintendent, but we don't manage or hire the administrators or the assistant superintendents. So I trust Dr. Matthews in his ratings of those employees and thus the recommendation. And regarding the 1.5% salary increase, that amount is actually less than other employee groups that are going to be receiving in terms of raises, because there are no steps with this group of individuals. So it's a flat 1.5% increase, and it would take effect with their first pay in July. So if we were to not do this, really we're to June 29th, so we really need to take action, we'd be delaying an increase that they have, in my opinion, earned.
Okay, thank you. Other comments from the board or discussion? Mr. O'Connor.
Well, I will not be supporting this recommendation for a couple of reasons. Let's take the first one. The whole idea of people on here being evaluated by the superintendent, and we trust the superintendent to do his job. There were comments made at the June 15th meeting that I was attempting to evaluate one of the school personnel because I specifically wanted the public relations and communication specialist position taken out of this recommendation. But that really couldn't be further from the truth. It should not come to the surprise of this board that I made the request at a May 24th email that I sent to Dr. Matthews, that Dr. Matthews actually shared with the board, and I clearly said in that email that I was voting not about the person itself, but about the position of public relations communication specialist. I just don't support the direction that Dr. Matthews has given to this position. Quite frankly, I think based on the direction, I think the position is a waste of taxpayer dollars, and I think it's been a waste of dollars for the past year, and I just don't see value in that position, and that's why I wanted to take that position out of this recommendation. It had nothing to do with the person. I just don't think the direction that we're taking with this position is of value to the district at all, and that's why, if it had been separate, I would have voted against that contract. In terms of the 1.5% salary increase, I just don't support the concept. I really think it sends a terrible message to our employees when we're giving our union personnel 1%. I understand the rationale about the steps, but if you look at it, almost 50% of our teachers are at the top of the scale, so they're not receiving steps at all. We've got, the way I look at it, if you look at total gross dollars, administrators are making more dollars, okay, than our teachers anyhow, so they're going to be getting more gross dollars even if they were to both get 1%. I just think when our leadership is getting more dollars in a raise situation, it just sends a terrible message to our employees. Now, having said that, I think our principals are great. I've said this every year as I voted this recommendation down because I've never been able to separate the issue. But I really believe our administrators should get an opportunity to earn more money, and I'd like to see it, based on some kind of separate merit-based program. I think we've got great principals, and I think they should have an opportunity to earn more than 1%. And why shouldn't they be in a merit-based system that will help them earn more dollars? Whether it's based on student performance or whatever metrics we choose to decide. So, having said that, the 1.5% is a horrible message, and I just don't support the position of the public relations and communications specialist.
Mr. Mena?
Sure. I agree with some of what Mr. O'Connor had just said. When we initially discussed the job function for this particular position, I'm talking about the public relation communication specialist, my understanding was that a significant portion of that position was to be in marketing the district. And I supported adding that administrative position because I felt that this was needed, and but it was a role that wasn't being fulfilled. I don't believe that there's a job performance issue here. I don't think that's farther from the case. What I think is there might be a disagreement on the direction and the expectations for that position. I would personally support a 1-year extension for that particular contract with the understanding that we could sit down as a group and come to a mutual understanding on how that position can best serve the district. On related topics, I did share with the superintendent my displeasure with what I felt politics being used and played in the delivery of press releases. I felt that some were being removed. Some people on the distribution list were being removed simply because we didn't like the coverage they were giving us. While I never got confirmation of whether that's been resolved, I'm hoping that won't be the case going forward. So while I am in support of every other contract on this list, I think our administrators do a great job. Being forced to have to, in essence, support these as a block is something that I don't support. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Are there additional, Dr. Mathis?
I would like to suggest that Mr. Roos, as our public relations communication specialist, has done a good job of an excellent job of marketing the district through the information that he's been able to get out in the public with the amount of press coverage that we've received. I believe that is a very valuable way to market our district. We are different from a number of districts in Oakland County and in the Tri-County area in that we are not schools of choice, and so that we don't, our marketing efforts are different. The marketing efforts that we're engaged in are trying to identify and promote the positive things that we're doing as a district, and I believe that Mr. Roos has done an excellent job of doing that, and so I believe that he is fulfilling the role and the function that he was hired to do, and I believe that he has earned an extension plus his increase in salary.
Any other? I do need to again read, because I told Mr. Cook that I would read a statement from him since he couldn't be here. So this is from Mr. Cook. Alignment from top to bottom, everyone in an organization needs to be aligned through its goals and objectives. When a theater production is being put on, the director gives everyone the same script, including the director. When the cast and crew are using the script from Cats and the director is using the script from Macbeth, the production suffers. The same is true for school districts' goals, objectives, and evaluation. Contract extensions are based on evaluation. The board evaluates the superintendent and aligns his goals and objectives to the district's goals. The current tool used for this evaluation, research-based and created by the Michigan Association of School Boards, or the MASB. The current tool used for the evaluation of cabinet, administrators, and teachers is also research-based and created by Dr. Marzano. The thing that is missing out of the Marzano evaluation is the alignment to the district goals. Yes, there are elements within some of the domains that can be tied back to the district goals of the Novi Community Schools. This linkage is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes they fit together, but only loosely, and the pieces won't stay together long. For Novi Community Schools to go from good to great, everyone from top to bottom must be working from the same script. Compensation. In a public school system, financially, the objective is to get as much money into the classrooms as possible. This is done through resources and facilities that foster learning and through teacher salaries. Over the past 2 years, many of Novi's teachers have only received 1.5% to 2% salary increases. Over that same period, administrators, cabinets, and the superintendent will receive a 3% salary increase. This administration will receive an additional 1.5% for the 2018-19 school year. And a recent newspaper column stated that Novi is academically one of the highest growth districts in the state. This is because Novi values education, Novi values learning opportunities, and Novi values teachers. Timing. Michigan Civil Code states that administrators must be given a written notice of non-renewal 60 days prior to the end of their contract. Further, the code states that administrators must be given 30 days notice that there is consideration for their contract may not be renewed. When these two conditions are not met, the administrators' contracts are automatically renewed for 1 additional year. The community has elected the board and placed its trust in the board. The support that the community gives Novi Schools and Novi Community School District Board of Education is second to none. It's the citizens of Novi that give the board its authority, and the laws of the United States and the state of Michigan give the board its guidelines. It is these guidelines that gives the Board of Education the authority to enter into contracts. The Board of Education votes to renew or not to renew administrators' contracts. Twice in the last 4 years, the renewal of administrators' contracts has been brought to the board after the 30 to 60-day window had closed. This effectively took away the power from the Board of Education. Law has already renewed the administrators' contracts through June 30th, 2018. Contracts must be brought to the board in a timely manner. Circumventing the authority of the board by not bringing administrator contracts to the board for renewal in a timely manner needs to stop. So those are the comments from Mr. Cook. There are other comments. Mrs. Stevenson.
I'm going to be in favor of this recommendation. I've had a mindset change after we had our work session back in the beginning of the school year regarding our administrators and how we need to look at them as a group, a collective group. So I'm going to be in favor of this. And as far as administrators do a lot more sometimes than teachers do, and they have a larger responsibility, and it takes the whole village to educate our children, not just the teachers. So I feel like the administrators play a very effective part in that. And I remember just a couple years ago that our cabinet and Dr. Matthews took a pay cut and didn't forego having a raise because they wanted to do what was best for students. So I think it's time to repay them back. So I'm going to be in favor of this recommendation this year. Thank you.
You kind of stole some of my comments because I too agree that I know there's been some question about the direction that some board members have, but we have gotten way more press, both locally and statewide, through the efforts of Mr. Bruce. He's also been very instrumental in bringing some of the position. I guess I'll talk more about the position, because the context he has brought some people to talk to our students that we have added a lot of value, I think, to their educational experience as well. But this is just from Thursday, 6/15 of 17. I remember not that long ago, actually, Mr. O'Connor, I think you made the comment that there wasn't, Novi News didn't even have anything with Novi on it, and yet this is 2 separate articles, both from Mr. Bruce, that got included in our newspaper, and I've seen that more and more over and over. And it is still probably one of the primary local sources for news articles about what's going on in our district. So I appreciate those efforts and think that that our marketing, is paying off. We're growing and continuing to grow. So I think that's positive. I would like us to pay attention to how many kids are moving in that might not be going to our schools and how we can reach them. But we always talk about that, and that doesn't have to do with our administrative contracts. So I will be supporting the administrative contracts, all the contracts as presented by Dr. Matthews. If there is no further questions or discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting administrative contracts as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say
No.
No.
Motion carries 4-2. Next is our assistant superintendent contracts. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The current assistant superintendent contracts expire on June 30th, 2017. Recommended that the superintendent be authorized to extend the following administrative contracts through June 30th of 2019. The assistant superintendent of academics and the assistant superintendent of human resources. The superintendent recommends that these contract extensions include a 1.5% salary increase. You'll notice the assistant superintendent for business and operations is not listed because he has retired from the district. This is his last official meeting.
All right. I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Hood.
I recommend that the Novi Community School District Board of Education renew the contracts of all listed administrators as noted.
Support.
Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Is there discussion or comments about our assistant superintendent contracts? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 5-1. Superintendent contract. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The contract between the School District Board of Education and myself states that the board at its sole discretion will vote on whether to extend the contract for an additional 2 years during the second year of the contract. The current contract between the Board of Education and myself is in its second year, and the current contract period is for the July 1, 2015 through June 30th, 2018. So I would recommend that you extend the contract through 2019-20 and that I receive a salary increase of 1.5%.
Would entertain a motion. Mrs. Gludzinski.
I move that the Novi Community School District Board of Education approve modifications to Superintendent Dr. Steve Matthews' existing contract with the following provisions. The superintendent's contract will be extended 2 years. The new contract will be for the years 2017-18 through 2019-2020. The superintendent will receive a salary increase of 1.5%.
All right. It's been moved by Mrs. Gludzinski, supported by Mrs. Hood. Comments or discussion about this item? Mr. Mena.
Yeah, I do. So last week I brought up the concern about not having done Dr. Matthews' evaluation like we have done with other administrators. One of my fellow board members astutely mentioned that that we had completed an evaluation about 6 months ago, albeit probably later than what we wanted to, where we normally would complete that. So I would be in favor of extending Dr. Matthews' contract for 1 year, waiting until we would get his evaluation completed here, hopefully in August, and then after a positive evaluation, coming back before the board and giving him an additional 1 year. I think that process would be more consistent with how we've dealt with all of our other administrators.
Good discussion.
Mrs. Hood. I just have some commentary, I guess. Over the last 6 weeks or so, I've had the pleasure of attending about 8 graduation parties and a Eagle Scout Court of Honor, and it's been fun to catch up with lots of parents. I have talked to and caught up with the parents, the kids, and obviously many of our conversations turn to Novi schools and my new activities here. And really, I talked to band parents and sports parents and special education parents and summa cum laude graduate parents. And one thing that I heard loud and clear is that our community respects and has broad support for Dr. Matthews as our superintendent. This is from parents who send their kids here. They send their kids to Novi schools. Some of them have moved to our community to send their kids to Novi schools. And they praise Dr. Matthews up and down. Now, several parents have told me that they are concerned about the treatment that Dr. Matthews receives at this board table. They don't understand the criticism he receives, especially with all the success that Novi Schools sees. The students from Novi Schools succeed wildly. Any best of list in Michigan, Novi is at the top or near the top. Our music and art students excel in competitions. We have double-digit merit scholars every year. The University of Michigan is a backup school for a good number of our graduating seniors. Our elementary students have access to just a wide range of learning opportunities. And in the 2015-16 Michigan State School Scorecard rankings, every one of our schools, and the board had a presentation on that in February, every one of our schools, every one of Novi schools, was ranked in the 95th percentile or above. And I believe it is because of this superintendent and the district that he runs. I did not participate in the board's recent appraisal of Dr. Matthews. I think that was in December before I joined the board. But since then, we have had parents here at the podium talking about they didn't understand how Dr. Matthews could receive only an effective rating. How did that happen? We got email really with the same topic. So we also had a parent talking about her second grader, talking about his Dr. Matthews, the superintendent. And, you know, our high school students are comfortable directly interacting with him, responding on Twitter. I mean, it's really a community, a village, and I think that Dr. Matthews does a fabulous job of leading it. Now, he does it because he and his team have their eyes on the ball. And the ball, in this case, is delivering a world-class education to our students. So I will be absolutely voting to extend Dr. Matthews' contract tonight. Thank you.
Additional comments or questions? Right, I will call.
I do. I just want to mention, I kind of take offense to that. I take offense that wanting to propose to give Dr. Matthews a one-year extension and then another one after his evaluation somehow shows some sort of maltreatment or disrespect. That can't be farther from the truth. And I'm afraid that you making those comments after I did is going to paint some picture to the community that somehow I don't, and it may not be your intention, but there will be a lot of people who walk away thinking that somehow that I'm showing poor treatment by doing something that will be consistent with what we're doing with other administrators. So I know you're probably going to say that's not your intention, but when you make those kind of comments, you know, we will get comments from community members saying, hey, you don't support Dr. Matthews. So
Mrs. Murphy?
Yes, Mrs. Murphy.
I gave no thought when I was preparing these comments much earlier this week. I gave no thought to what other comments any other board members would make. It's.
So just to be clear, the comments were not directed at anything that Mr. Mess said. These are all independent comments. So appreciate the concern. Are there additional comments or questions before we call the question and vote? All right. I will also be supporting the contract. Obviously, we're working together on some of the things that we need to work together on, and I believe our district is moving in a very positive direction. So I will be agreeing to support the contract. So all those in favor of extending Dr. Matthews' contract as per the recommendation and the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
No.
Motion carries 4-0. Or 4-2, excuse me. All right, we do have one policy update revision on our agenda, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. This is the policy 5111.01 on the ESSA homeless students. There was a concern about some of the phraseology that was in the policy. The phrase is taken directly from the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act, which is the law that this policy references, and so we would ask that the policy be adopted as it's written and presented by the Neola group.
Okay, I would entertain a motion. Mrs. Kubzinski.
That in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, the Board of Education adopts Section A of the Neola policies as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Kubzinski and supported by Mr. Mena. Mr. O'Connor.
So the issue here, if I remember correctly, is how we define homeless. So are we saying we're going to be covered legally? I mean, really, that's all I care about.
Yes.
Because I did think that it was a weird definition in terms of what homeless is or isn't in Novi. So I just want to make sure that this, what you're saying by this definition will cover it.
Yep.
Okay. Thank
Mrs.
you.
Kubzinski.
Yeah, I just want to echo that this language in this policy is one of the examples that Neola said tonight. That's something that's required by law, and we have used the exact terminology that was required by the law. The committee did not adapt this at all. It's what was put forth, and Ms. Holly went back and twice, I believe at least, to confirm that we were in fact using the language. And again, then what we heard tonight is they're going to warranty, because we are adopting their policy, and that's why. And there's also a deadline for adopting this policy, so that's one of the reasons we need to take action on this tonight and can't delay any longer.
Okay. So if there's no additional comments or questions about that policy, we will go ahead and, we do have to adopt this tonight, correct, Mrs. Holly, because by July 1st. So all those in favor of Board Policy 5111.01, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next is our second opportunity for comments from the audience. We no longer have anyone with us, so I'm going to assume that no one wants to come up and speak to us this evening. We will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. I'd like to take this time to express my appreciation to Steve Barr for his service to the Novi Community School District for the last 6 years. He's been a tremendous asset to our district, from his work on our bond to his budget projections to his enrollment projections to his willingness to organize our early morning superintendent snow calls. He has made a significant difference in our district. I want to publicly thank Mr. Barr and wish him good fortune as he leaves Novi and takes up other challenges. And I would also like to wish everyone a great summer. We're working hard this summer to complete some roofing and parking lot and adding classrooms over at Village Oaks. But we wish everyone a great summer, and we will be prepared when students return to the district on Tuesday, September 5th.
Okay, excellent. Next we have our administrative reports. This is Mr. Barr. I think the camera should pan over to you to see their wonderful balloons. This is your final meeting. Please put your hat on.
I have nothing to share, thank you.
No administrative reports? Well, all right. And Ms. Stiglio.
We, as you know, are continue to work hard on the hiring. Some other areas in my department oversee evaluation, all evaluations. And one thing that the board probably should be aware of is in 2018-19, we have to change our evaluation system from 75% of instructional and 25% for student accountability to 60-40. So a committee's been working all year this year to get ready for that, and it's been a great work in progress. We are going to make some adjustments next year. We are staying with our eye observation and Marzano model, which is one of the 5 state models to choose from. And the model has changed. It has become far less cumbersome. And so we are going to next year change. We'll stay with Marzano, the same model. It's a different form. For example, Domain 1 has 41 elements. Next year it will have 17. So it will be a much more user-friendly model. This will, I believe, we're going into our 5th year of using it. And so we've been working hard on setting up training. Our administrators are going to get trained in 2 days in August. And then during Dr. Weber in the Office of Academics Impact Professional Development on the 28th and 29th, the Learning Sciences, who represents eye observation, will be in to train our teachers. We're also going to do some piloting, and right now we do 2 main observations in the classrooms, and we're going to go, instead of 2 long observations, we're going to do some piloting and go in the classroom 8 times for 10 to 15 minutes instead of 2 times for 30 to 60 minutes. This will allow our administrators to get in, especially our new to Novi and our newer teachers, get in and see them more frequently. In the law, if you have been highly effective for 3 consecutive years in a row, you can be evaluated biannually. We're going to exercise that law starting next year as well, so that while we're trying to get into classrooms more of teachers that are new to Novi and new to teaching, our senior or our highly effective teachers have been highly effective 3 years in a row will have what's called kind of an off year. They'll still have to do student data, of course, and they'll still have to do their growth goals and have expectations, but it'll allow our administrators to get into classrooms more frequently where teachers need that support. So the committee had worked really hard this year. Those are some big moves. And so we're looking forward to that, and it's been a very collaborative working with our administrators and our teachers as well, and it has been a very positive part of the year. And so I wanted to make sure you knew that going into the summer. A lot of training is going to take place, and we are really preparing for that 18-19 shift to the law.
Okay, great.
Ms. Kendall?
Questions about this, Ms. Kendall?
Sorry.
Oh, Stevenson.
Stevenson.
It's
okay.
She said it first. Okay.
How many highly effective teachers do we have within the district? And are our effective teachers able to go into those classrooms to observe so they can learn how to become highly effective?
Great questions. So I would say we have about 80 to 85% that are at the highly effective rating. That shifts from year to year. In our system, we've done since year 1, every teacher has to do a peer observation. So they go in using the eye observation system themselves, and they have to be observed by a peer, and they have to observe a peer. One of the great things about that too is, per the law, we have to have every new teacher assigned a mentor. So our mentors do a really good job of helping our new teachers identify teachers to go in and watch. Our administrators do that as well. I know as when I was a building principal, I would say you really need to go see this particular teacher. And so it helps kind of navigate that. You don't have to be observed and observe the same person, just as long as you're observed by somebody and you observe somebody. So that has been part of our norm.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments or questions? Mr. O'Connor?
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that this board plan one of our work sessions over the next year to talk about evaluation. I'm a little concerned as we plan for 18-19 that the teachers are moving ahead and doing something, and I do support conceptually what Mr. Cook's been saying over the last year about trying to figure out how we can line our evaluations together so that they're tied not only to our district goals, but whatever the evaluation is of the superintendent, be similar message and similar goals to the cabinet, to the principals and the directors, and all the way down to our teachers. Now, if we can't accomplish that alignment, that's fine, but I'd like to see a work session where we can at least talk about it rather than the teachers going off and doing Marzano. And here, we've got some time to plan for this. This might be an opportunity to see if we can get that kind of alignment in place. I think it'd be a great way to help accomplish our 4 district goals.
All right, that's a good thought. We can look at the agenda calendar and maybe talk a little bit more. Does Marzano have, just out of curiosity, a superintendent tool that they've ever been working on?
So I can look into that. Right now, we did align, and Marzano is aligned very much to our 4 goals, especially goals 1 and 2. Absolutely. We implemented our school leaders and our district leaders are on the Marzano evaluation system as well. We even have our non-classroom staff. So all of us are aligned together, and we did that so we are speaking the same language, so that we are working towards our 4 district goals. And so that there's some consistency. Our administrators are getting evaluated using the same language as in which they are evaluating their teachers. Part of their evaluation is how they evaluate their teachers. So that part is very much aligned. And I can certainly look into a superintendent tool if that's something you're interested in.
I would be curious as to whether or not there is something aligns, and maybe it's a work session to kind of flesh that out a little bit and talk about how ours does or does not fit and all of that. Yes?
It seems like we had a committee that looked at the superintendent evaluation tools. Willie and you and I think you weren't on it.
Yeah.
You were, and we came to the conclusion that the Marzano tool really didn't reflect what we needed to have in terms of what the superintendent's job responsibilities were. So
I didn't think it was Marzano, was it? I thought it was.
Well, anyway, we did look at a number of tools, and we had come to the conclusion that the MASB tool reflected best the expectations we have for the superintendent. But I certainly think it's appropriate and important for us to understand how our employees are evaluated, and for you to be able to have the opportunity to explain how it all fits together.
Okay, sure.
So
we'll look to do that at one of our work sessions, and if we need to add an additional meeting, perhaps we will have to do that. All right, next is our committee reports. Mrs. Kludzinski.
Yeah, the Governance and Policy Committee needs to meet before the August 3rd meeting of the board. We have more policies that have deadlines to be, that need to be adopted, as well as the fact that we need to get back on track in terms of developing our board procedures manual. So I asked Ms. Holly to send a doodle document out today. I apologize for the short notice, but I gave you 5 dates between now and then. And if at all possible, if you could give feedback by noon tomorrow so we can get a date set and we can get that posted. We were originally going to meet on the 13th of July, but that night we are doing a different meeting of the board, a workshop. And I just think in terms of effectiveness for us to do 5 to 7, one meeting and then go from 7 to 10 would put me over the top. So that's why I'm suggesting we move the committee. So if you could give that feedback, I'd appreciate it. If those 5 days don't work out, we'll see what else we can come up with. Oh, and just the other, Ms. Holly will be posting the committee meeting, and our committee meetings are public, open meetings, just like the meeting of the board.
And
is that a change in direction, or what is that all about?
It's we received from Brad Banasic at MASB, that the committee meetings, to err on the side of caution, we should just post them so that the public is aware of them, and as we move forward, we will do that.
And they've always been open.
But they haven't been posted, so the public.
No.
But we will do that as we move
I think
forward.
we talked a little bit about the historical perspective that we did use to post committees, but then we went to committee of the whole, we stopped posting them, and we clearly had never gone back to that direction. So I don't know that it was a change of direction so much as we've moved back to committees, but we didn't take care of all the other things that
To be more mindful of posting.
to be more mindful, because we didn't ever think about it. In light of that, the other thing that the council also suggested along those lines is that we work at how we approve our minutes. I mean, we have minutes and we review them. We can vote to approve them, but it can only be the quorum of the people that were at the meeting. So, but we don't usually vote at the meeting. So I think we need to talk about that at the committee meeting also in terms of how we do that. And obviously getting that information then out to the board as soon as those are approved. If the board needs that information sooner, you can still report out on it at the meetings, but we'll need to approve them most likely at the committee meeting. But we can talk about that hopefully at the meeting also. So other committee reports, I don't think we haven't had a finance committee meeting, but we'll have to make sure that as we do, that we do post those as well, and that minutes are kept so that we can, which I know we do keep minutes from finance committee meetings, but that we have a method of approving those as well. Is there other board communication this evening?
Yes.
please do the official presentation.
12 years of service, congratulations. It is your apple from the OCSBA.
It has been a privilege and an honor to be elected 3 times to serve on the school board, and isn't this cool? Look, it's just like a red delicious apple. So thank you to my fellow board members for tolerating me for 12 years, and this is wonderful, and I appreciate you picking it up. I was out of the state when Oakland County recognized the other individuals, so thank you for doing that. Yes, I do. I would like to just publicly thank Steve Barr for his service. You have a hat that your family gave you, but if I were going to put something on the top of that hat, I would crown you Budget King, because I've worked with another individual before you, and you made the budget process easy to understand, finances for lay people, and point out where our funding comes from in a very consistent way. And you've just been so super accurate about budgeting. And the thing I really love is when we come up with programmatic things that we'd like to see, instead of saying, well, that's not in the budget, you do a really tremendous job of figuring out how to enable us to do the things that are right for kids, and I just really appreciate that. I've been the treasurer of the board a number of times, and on the finance committee, I don't know how many times, but a lot. And the other thing you've done a great job is lead through our audits. I don't think there has been a single audit exception in the 12 years, maybe one somewhere, but I absolutely can't remember what it would have been. So I thank you for the leadership that you've provided to our finance department, as well as your leadership for maintenance and food service, and just you have been a great leader, and you've contributed in so many ways, and it's just to see the things that we've been able to do facilities wise because of your leadership and wisdom and foresight in terms of the bond. Is awesome. You leave a legacy behind that will remind me of the contributions you've made, and I really appreciate it.
Novi Board communication. Sure, the accolades aren't over. Mr. Mena.
Yeah, I'd like to say the same thing. We will really miss you, Mr. Barr. I always appreciated your candidness and honesty. Oh, candidness, absolutely. Passion, dedication, and man, you're one of the most emotional guys I know, man. So, but I really did appreciate that from you. A lot of passion from you, a lot of dedication, and really did enjoy those opportunities that I got to work with you closely on the millage, on the bond, and including the 8-mile trip we once got to ride bikes around Kensington as well. So thank you. I appreciate all the work you did for the district, and I do appreciate your friendship as well.
Comments, Mrs. Hood?
Oh, I will just add a little something, just because I don't have the history here, but I would have to say that, Mr. Barr, you are so patient. And when I would text you with this line item, can you please explain this to me? I am quite sure for the 5th time, and you do, or you have, and I really appreciate it. But really, thank you so much.
How come you got nice texts? You should see some of the stuff I used to get.
Hers aren't at midnight.
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Is there any other additional comments?
You'll be missed.
I've got a really supportive family, and I will, without saying, forgetting, I've had people before me that have been very good. They do different things, different ways. Bill Barr and Mr. Coster and and Gail Credit all did good jobs in different ways. And when you're here and you have to deal with a $470 cut per student, during the years of 9-10, as Mr. Lewis was all the time, it's not hard to sit here and manage a budget when you're sitting here with student increases and a little bit of money from the state, a little bit, I still say. versus dealing with a $470 cut per student and declining enrollment. So, and having a supportive board, having a supportive community, and it makes all of our jobs easier when you have a supportive community and awesome kids, and an awesome cabinet, awesome administrators, and awesome staff, everything, and an awesome family that lets me work day and night to do what's best for kids. Like I said, my wife doesn't get enough credit. My wife is, and I do what's best for kids. My wife does what's best for everybody. She's a pharmaceutical rep who sells pharmaceuticals that saves people's lives. People I know in this district that use what she has, and but no one ever hears about what she does because it's not as sexy as building a fitness room or building an early childhood building. That's okay, but here they are showing up tonight, with stuff to support me over and over and over, and looking forward to a few days of rest before I start my next venture next Wednesday. So it's been a great ride.
I would just like to say real quickly that you almost made numbers fun for me. And that is saying a lot. And I think that without your passion, Steve, which other people have commented on, quite honestly, the bond that you pass so fabulously, and some of the other things that you've done, it would not have been the same without you. And it is not going to be the same without you. We will miss you terribly. I am thrilled, however, that I know where you live because you moved to our community. And to have you still be a part of our community is going to be an asset to the community as well. So I thank you that you are here with your wonderful supportive family. And I look forward to seeing you elsewhere and maybe not here at the meeting. So.
You haven't seen the last of us.
All right. I hope not. I hope not. All right. Well, seeing nothing further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Hood. All those in favor of adjourning for the evening, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you. Thank you again.